guys, welcome back to another video of mine. And before I forget, thank you very much for those people who have subscribed and are coming back to view the next one. And for those who are new to my channel or are just looking at a few things, then please definitely hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified of all my new videos that are coming out, whether it be related to solar panels or whether it's related to smart homes. The other thing I would like to say is if you like my videos, please definitely smash the like button, as the more and more likes I get, the more and more it gets ranked up, so more and more people can then benefit from the information I'm about to give you. So this video is going to basically replace the video I did on the Lux Power solar system, hybrid battery system back then. Now, remember that video is now quite a few months old, and since then we've had more and more firmware updates and new features added. So I thought, why not do a newer video with all these new bits and pieces and features that have been added, so I can explain it all to you, so I don't have to keep then explaining it to all my customers and or anybody else who's come across this video and watching it. All right, so this is just my thingy. So what I'm going to do, as before, I'm going to put down the web address of the Lux Power in the description below, and then what you can do is take a look at that, click on it, and once you're logged in, you can use the same username and password that you use for the app to log into here, and you'll then see this. Now, with the app and this, as we've said before, this is same information. Whatever I'm going to show you on the computer here is exactly the same on the phone. The biggest difference is the fact that it's a lot easier to use on the desktop than it is to use on the phone itself. Okay, now where do we start? So let's start with solar yield. So I'm going to start from the beginning, as this video is going to supersede the old one. So I am going to start from the beginning. So let's start with the first box, solar yield. So what this does is the top figure tells you how much solar you have produced today. So in this current 24-hour cycle, so from midnight to midnight, so far that's what I've made. And at the bottom, it actually tells you what the total yield is since the system was installed. Okay, nice and easy, straightforward. All you have to remember, top figures, how much it's been produced today, and the bottom figures, total lifetime or forever count, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, battery charge, as the name suggests, how much energy has gone into the battery today. This can be from solar, this can be from off-peak charging. It doesn't matter, it will just count it up here, and again at the bottom it tells you how much has been done in total. All right, feed-in energy. So this one, export figures. So how much has been exported today, how much has been exported in the lifetime. So not much, so I am running mine nice and efficiently. And if I click on it again, it tells you how much has been imported today and how much has been imported in total since the system was installed. So we have a car, so that's why we have a 49 import as well. So we are digressing here, but we use it to charge the car and the batteries at the same time. And of course, consumption. How much consumed today? Now, this consumption figure is irrespective of where the source of the energy has come from, whether it's from the solar, whether it's from the battery, or whether it's from the grid. It's all here, how much is done in total. Okay, and of course the final figure, total usage, how much energy we've used since the system was installed. Okay, so these for me is approximately 18-19 months, give or take. Okay, so now we're going to scroll down a little bit, come to this section here, which is our little graph section. So here represents our total PV power. Oh, before I proceed, this thing always gets everybody. You have to remember that this here is a snapshot image that is taken approximately every 5 minutes. the charge controller inverters. So I've got a charge controller, two charge controllers, hence why I have a picture like this. Okay, so don't worry about yours. Yours might show a single picture, double picture, so I can see two serial numbers here with two sets of details, but you may have just a one single hybrid inverter, or if you are set up like I am with a parallel system, you'll have two sets of figures here. But this, it shows me the combined data. That's why I have this picture. Irrespective, it's a 5-minute snapshot time. So every 5 minutes, so if I turn on the kettle right now, we're not going to see anything happening with this picture, unless the point at which I turn the kettle on is also coincides with the point that a snapshot image is taken. So then we'll probably see something like energy going into the house from the grid, and then it'll just stay like that until the next update comes along. There is nothing to worry about when you have an image like that. The other time is when I turn the kettle off. So no, let's do this again. I've turned the kettle on. Initially, that surge of energy is required to run the kettle. It has to take the energy from somewhere, so it'll take it from the grid. So the energy will come in this way. Then, so, in fact, if I do this, and just do that there. So what'll happen is then the energy is going to come in that way. So you'll see energy coming from the panels, energy coming from the batteries, going into the house, and then of course energy going in from the grid, because a snapshot was taken, because what happens is we need that energy to run the kettle straight away. A few seconds later, when the charge controllers react to the energy demand, it'll know what's happened, and then what it will do is it will stop that energy, and then this will jump up to what the new requirement is. So for example, if it's a 2 kilowatt kettle, the consumption will go up by 2 kilowatts. So we'll see, we'll see that jump by, say, wrong figure, so on. So we'll see that jump to say 2,981, and then that will also say 2,782, and the picture will go back to normal. Now, let's say the kettle has finished boiling and it's turned off. So what we're going to then see is the battery is still sending out energy, but the house doesn't need it anymore. So it has to go somewhere. So where does it go? It goes to the grid. So then you'll see a snapshot where the energy is going back to the grid. Again, this is nothing to worry about. That energy has to go somewhere, and therefore the only place it can go is to the grid. So until the charge controllers or the hybrid inverters, the CT clamp that's measuring it reacts to it, you will see a little bit flow. So as I said before, the snapshot image, if it is taken in that time frame, you will then see an image going this way instead of the energy going that way. But a few seconds later, it will disappear, and this will all go back to normal, and the consumption and the battery discharge will also then go back to normal again. Okay, so don't worry about this. Now, the only time you need to be getting back in touch with your installers is if this, with the grid, going in and out of the grid, is quite continuous, and every snapshot image that you check is showing that it's going either in or out, and the batteries aren't discharging properly even though you've got solar. That's when you need to get in touch with your installer. But until then, I would leave it alone and don't worry about it. Okay, another way to tell, so let's escape that. Another way to tell is from here, import and export. If your import and so mine has remained 0, which means I don't have to worry. Even that snapshot image, when it's going backwards, when something's switched off, if it's on for only a couple of seconds, it doesn't really register. But if it was being on for a while, or there was a lot of export going on, this would then jump up, and then I could be able to see that, hang on a minute, something is wrong with the system. It is exporting more than I expected. Likewise, on the import side, I knew I was going to have this sort of import today due to charging the car, charging the batteries. But since this morning, this has stayed at 49. It's now 4:30. This morning when I checked at 8 a.m, it was also on 49, so it hasn't moved at all. So I know for a fact, even if I see that odd shift of energy going into the property and the snapshots have come and gone, it's now still 49, I know the system is running fine. Okay, then I don't need to worry. The other place to look at this data is here, graphs. Now, these are not just little pretty diagrams, but they also tell us a lot. So, and on top of this, we can highlight this, and can you see that they become highlighted? We can even switch off the different things to make it easier to read. So things like state of charge, SOC. So from here, and you can see the time was around 12:15 at midnight. It was on 70%. It's charging, and by about, luckily around about 1ish, it got fully charged, and then it just remained on the 99% until around about 5:30. They start to discharge, which is as expected because that's the off-peak charging time that I have. And then slowly the batteries are discharging, so my usage has been pretty steady all the way down to where we are now, around about 4:30. If I put on consumption, you can then see how the consumption figures are going. So the consumption, see, this is where the consumption drops, and then there's a bit of an extra consumption here until that's the car's smart charging in the car. And by 5:30, I went back to normal again. So that's when the car, no charging in the car and no charging on the batteries in the house. So it went back to a normal kind of level of consumption because of my off-peak tariff. And then we're just back to normal nominal amounts, and then a few bits here and there. And of course, this is probably when the washing machine was running, and that's it. Then we've got the grid. So let's turn off everything else. Now the grid. Here, so when it's down, when it's below zero, negative means you are importing power. So it's costing you money to buy power. And here it was on a higher rate because simultaneously charging the car, charging the batteries, then it dropped, and then that's when the car just took over, and then the car on and off with the smart charging of the car until 5:30, where it's been zero, and pretty much zero all the way. We have a little blip here, little blip there, for this is probably when the machine was turned on. So if we click on the consumption, as you can see, it kind of matches there when the machine was actually turned on. So for that few seconds, when the snapshot image was taken, it was registering that it was importing a kilowatt and the consumption was over 5. So this is what I mean by looking at the data. You can tell, yes, this must have been the snapshot time, and then it went back to normal again, and then the snapshots were all at normal. So you can then see how it's been remaining on zero and matching the consumption, and then and the consumption level goes back to normal as well. The other thing you can compare is consumption with battery, and as you can see, high consumption, we know that's the grid, and then from here the consumption and battery is pretty much identical here until we get to about here, so which is when the little bit of solar is kicking in. We've had a very cloudy day today, so that's why the difference between the battery discharging and the consumption is very, very close together because of solar production. So look at those figures now, battery discharging 532, consumption 711, difference being only around about 170, and so therefore my solar would have been 170. So you can see how the battery level is pretty much mimicking the consumption of the property, and there's a solar on top of that. So you can see how the green plus the blue will equal the orange for the consumption. Okay, so those are the things that you can do with these with the graph figures. It gives you a lot more data. All right, and of course you can always go backwards and forwards, backwards really, and see how you're doing on previous days and see what's going on. And this is the data we use as installers and the tech to go through to see how the system is behaving, and if there's any issues we can actually see the data and look for it through here. Under here we have extra figures now, the energy overview for April. And again, it's pretty much whatever the graph shows you in a nice little format over a period of 24 hours. Here, we'll just give you total figures for per day. So all we can do is, again, we can switch off each individual graph and then click on, say, consumption. So how much energy we've used on a daily basis as a quick guide. So you can see when I've been charging the car and when I've not been charging the car. Then you've got how much I've imported. So if you look at this, consumption and import to users, pretty much the same. Export is 0, so it's import, and you can see. So as you can see, it's fairly the same, because the difference here is the gap between these two is really how much solar has come into it. So whatever I've imported, whatever I've used, and then the little difference is made up by the solars. And then you can easily clearly see from this graph that the weather's not really been the best, because the gaps between the two are quite small. So if you look at yours, if you've got a bigger solar system than I have, then you'll be able to see that the consumption might be here, but the import might be a lot lower, and therefore the gap is a lot bigger. You can then check things like the battery stats, how much energy has gone into the batteries. So from there, but here I only put in 7.7 yesterday, and this is where Octopus Smart Charging comes into play. So because I'm on Octopus tariff, so it's a good time to plug Octopus now. Don't forget, my link is in the description below regarding if you want to get onto Octopus yourself and benefit from off-peak charging for cars and your battery system. You'll get £50 credit, and so will I get £50 credit if you're in the UK. So yesterday I plugged my car in, and I needed it was pretty much on 4% left because I did a long journey. So it gave me a time window, not the usual 6 hours, but from 7 p.m. So I got an extra roughly 4 hours. So I had pretty much 10 hours of off-peak charging. At that time, my batteries were on around about 50-odd%, hence why I only needed to import 7.7 instead of the usual 13, 14, 15 kilowatts. Okay. And so the batteries were paused, so I didn't use the energy in the batteries, and therefore I only needed to charge them a little bit because they were pre-charged. All right, so definitely information for you there. If with Octopus, now we are going to talk about Octopus later as well on the Agile tariff, but we'll come to that. And of course, this graph will just show you solar production, what the solar's been like. As I've stated before, I've got a very small solar system, so it's only been single digits. I've not got more than 10. So most of you will have a much larger system than I have. Mine's only 2 kilowatts, so hence that's all I can do. Right, so let's put these all back on. So that's that for this page. Now, if we click on the data page here, it's just charts and things like that, which, to be honest, if you're really into checking the numbers, this is where you would go. This is also what we do look at when we want to see the performance of the system, and this goes into the nitty-gritty of it all, like power to grid, I don't know what that is, voltage, currents, how much from my EPS, 0 because it's not connected. This might be a useful one, state of charge, battery voltages, how much power charging, discharge power and things like that. Now if I go, that's not my master, this one's my master. So this one's my master because I've got two, if you remember back, I have got two systems. So this one's my master, so you can see how the solar has been performing, how it's been discharging. So because I've got two charge controllers, I have to then click on the individual ones to get the graphs for the individual units. Same with the energy kind of graphs. Then again, looking at all the data, it can just give you some historical data about charging, discharging, and each one is separate, and we can go to the different years, all totals, etc. So you can see how long I've had my system for as well. Again, data history, that's just pure numbers. Export the data if you wish to analyze this any further, draw some graphs, but to be honest, as users, you don't really need to know any of this stuff. That's just ignore that. Event history, any issues that we've had with the system will all be logged here. So if there's, when I was installing, so this is way back, and when it was recovered, what the battery voltage is or any communication failures are all logged here. So we can then check the data here. So this is one thing that we do look at, and something you might want to have a quick look at sometimes, just to see what's going on with the with how the system is. So if you think something might be wrong, data event history should give you a little indication. It's the equivalent of having the alarm bell on your app as well, which then gives you some information. Configuration, that's just, you don't need to do that. It's just configuration of the system, what if the status is, what it is, what the ratings are, etc. And of course, user with your emails. Overview just tells you a quick overview of what's going on right now as a snapshot. And then device is exactly the same, because I've got two dongles, because I've got two, so the station is my whole home, but the device is, I've got two dongles. So that's why I can see then how each one is doing. And one is always master, the other one is slave, and that's why some of the features for the slave won't happen. So solar power is not there, charge power is not there, it's all in the master. Maintenance. So this is where we do some setting ups. Right, so from this page you'll choose your dongle ID and hit read. Now that then kind of grays out until it becomes solid again. That means all the system information has loaded. Now that is loaded, application setting, you leave that alone, we don't need to touch it. Now charge setting, this is what you would do to enable your charges. So system charge power rate, leave that to 100, so that means it will always charge at 100% from the solar, excess solar. Okay, AC charge. So this is 3 sets of timers. So you've got a timer here, timer there, and the third timer's here. And you put your timers in and then hit set. And then you'll have a message that says set successfully. Then you know it's been done. And of course you put your end time in there. If you wanted a second and a third time slot, you would then input your data in them and you would then set it. The AC charged enable and disable, this is where you would turn it on and off to actually make sure that these timers are enabled. If you don't want to, or you switch tariffs, you can always disable it. AC charge power rate, what the speed at which you want the batteries to charge at. Now, I have a 6-hour time window, and I have 2 charge controllers and I have 3 batteries on each. So I've got a total of 9.6 on each side. And we know that these charge at a rate of 3.5 kilowatts per hour, which means that if I put this to 100%, it only takes 3 hours to charge. So to help make my battery life a little bit better, and also to help reduce the instantaneous load on the house, I've reduced my charging rate down to 70%. So that still gives me enough time to charge my batteries over the 6-hour window. In fact, I can even drop this down to 60. Don't need 70%, even 60. 50% is my lowest. If I put it at 50, that'll take pretty much the full 6 hours to charge through. So here, I'm giving myself about an hour window. What battery level do I want it at? Well, as I've said before, my solar system is small, so I always charge at 100. Whereas if you've got a bigger solar system and you know what the weather's like tomorrow, and you know that the sun's going to be shining, then you may want to adjust that down. But we will talk about the weather compensator as well shortly. So that will then automate it all for you as well. So if you don't have that, you can do it yourself manually. So let's say tomorrow is a nice sunny day, and you know that you're going to produce a good number of units. So you may want to say reduce the battery charge level down to say 30% or 40%. So you need, you want that energy in the morning for breakfast, then you're out for the rest of the day, let the sun do the rest. And by the time you get home, you've got full battery. Or tomorrow's going to be very cloudy and dull, so let's just do 900%. or 90%. Again, this is something that you can do and set on your own directly. Charge first. So charge priority means the batteries will go into, the solar energy goes into the batteries first before the house. So we kind of like prioritizing the batteries. There may be some instances where you would want to do that. Maybe if you're on some sort of flux tariff and you want to save the energy for 4 p.m. So you can actually then set the rates and how much priority charge you want. So if you're one of those on the flux tariff and you need at least 4 units between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m, you can then put those charge priorities in there to make sure that by 4 p.m, so say from 12 till 4, I want all the energy to go into the batteries until I get, say, 40% before it goes into the house. So then what that means is you'll end up having to use the grid for a bit while the batteries are charging. So, but when come 4 p.m, all the energy will come from the batteries, saving you paying the peak price of electric. So that's on like a flux tariff. That's probably the only time I would actually see this being used. Apart from that, I don't think you actually need to use that as much. Okay, so again, something that's not really used that often, the charge first system. Okay, now discharge settings, pretty much identical to the charge settings. The only difference is we're discharging the batteries. So if you have got a good off-peak rate, export rate, and therefore you want to make sure you want to maximize your export guarantee, then this is where you would set it. Again, you would set up how quickly you want the system to discharge. At 100%, it will discharge at the full rate, so in my case 3.5. How much will the batteries go down to? So this is important. We, as an installer, we would always set this up to 5%, because these top figures here is the global figure. So this will discharge at the full rate. This will discharge maximum 95%, so it goes down to 5%. Off grid, we can ignore. We just leave that as a default 3. Here, let's disable that. It's not supposed to be enabled. Now, here is, for example, between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m, you can put the timings in to say that, yes, I've got a good smart export guarantee and I've got some good payments coming in from the flux tariff, and they're paying me, I don't know, 30, 40p per unit. So let's discharge my batteries at the full rate, but only when I get to around about 20%, because I want to save some for myself, for my house, because I don't want all the energy to be gone by, say, 5 p.m. and then the batteries then they're down to, say, 5%, and then I've got to pay 2 hours of peak price, and there's been no point of exporting. So that's where this safety margin comes in, where you put 20% here. So this is where this is handy in the discharge setting. Apart from that, really, you don't really need to use. Again, it's only good for those who have got some good good export rates. Next one, battery calibration. Battery calibration, you can either enable it, disable it, and ideally this is if you need to calibrate the batteries. Now normally this would happen automatically, especially if you're doing the off-grid, off-peak charging. If you're doing off-peak charging, that is done automatically, because the whole battery system would automatically go to 100% every day. So therefore all the batteries will come back into alignment every night. So you don't need to worry about it. So this part you don't really need. And the battery calibration usually is done by the technical team over at Infinity or Lux Power. And so again, you don't really need to touch any of this. If you are charging purely on solar, then there's also a built-in script that will automatically balance your batteries up overnight. So there's no need for any intervention by yourselves. So personally, I would leave this alone. Let Lux take care of it all, and let the scripts take care of it all. This is just for the installers and the tech teams, just to manage the batteries if there ever is an imbalance in the batteries, and for any issues like that. And again, reset, you don't need to touch resets either, and there's nothing there for you to touch. Okay, before I forget, I remember about this button here, Start Quick Charge. Start Quick Charge is a one touch. So some things, if it's become, shall we say, a dull day, or there's some batteries are going low and you know you want a bit of energy coming in for that peak time that's coming in and you haven't got enough power, then rather than playing around with the timers, you can hit this Start Quick Charge button. And what it will start doing is, using the default settings, it will automatically start charging your batteries. To stop the charge, you then come back to it and just hit the button again and stop the charge, and that's it. So that's just there, as the name suggests, a quick start without having to do any timers or anything like that. It's, shall we say, the equivalent would be something like a water boost button if you've got a hot water cylinder and you want some quick hot water. So that's why that would come in. Now the other two things we're going to talk about, Octopus Charge and Weather Optimize. So let's start with the easy one, Weather Optimize. So Weather Optimize and Octopus Charge both have to be enabled by your installer. So you need to give them a quick message and they will enable it. Once it's enabled, you then click on Edit, and let me just check here if I do location. Yeah, we've got to put our location here. So we can then click on there, get our location put into there, so we are on that exact location, and then that will be updated. So if I do that, and then we can just choose where you are, and let's just choose there as I'm in Leeds, and just hit update. Successful, and both are now set up. So what I've done on here, if then click on management now, because I've got two. Remember this now, if you've got a parallel system set up, whether they're two parallel hybrid inverters or two parallel charge controllers called squirrels, you will have to set them both up individually. So hit management, hit edit. You set the charge time up, and then you got set percentage by weather. So if it's clear skies, as I do mine 100%, I've just left mine default on 100%. I've only enabled my weather optimize because, just to show you guys. So I've left mine on 100. So clear skies, if it's clear skies, I've said I want it 100, but you may want to change that to say 20. So what will happen is the batteries will only charge up to 20%, and that's it. And this is for the next day's weather. I believe by 9 p.m. on the day before, it reads the weather forecast, and then it breaks it down into these kind of categories. And then depending on what the data it receives in those categories, it will charge it up to those sorts of levels. So if the forecast tomorrow from, say, I don't know, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. was clear sky, or it's the majority weather, because I said I want the charge time between 11:30 and 5:30, so I wanted to match my EV charge timings, then it will then, whatever the most common one is from here, it will charge it to that particular level. So we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different options, and if none of the options match, it just goes into other. I've got a couple of clients who actually do use it, and it says it works okay, it works quite well. So again, it's something worth experimenting with. So rather than having to do this manually, like I was explaining earlier on in the video, you can actually automate this task as well by doing it on here. And again, I would then replicate it. Here in that same window. Okay. So, but now, whilst I'm here, I'm just going to disable it as I don't use it. Okay. Next, Octopus Charge. So this is perfect if you are on a Octopus Agile tariff. This one's built into the system. So what happens, again, these are the nighttime slots. They go from between midnight and 8 a.m. And then you have the daytime slots, which go from 12 midday to 7 p.m. And they're split into half-an-hour slots. So you can see that from here. All right. Now, Agile automatically publishes their data, and this Lux will automatically retrieve that data from my location every day at approximately 9 p.m. Once it's retrieved it, it will then have some ticks in the different time slots. Now, how you want it to charge. There's two methods of charging using the Octopus Agile tariff. Let's click on management and edit. Remember, I'm on 2. So you can set it according to price or according to set points. So I'm going to do it for price to begin with. Now let's do the top one, according to set points. So between midnight and 8 AM, I've chosen 4 set points. Between midday and 7 PM, I've chosen 2 set points. When you have, give me 1 second, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you a sample. Okay, so as I was saying, I've got you an example. So this is from one of my clients. Let's just increase the font. So let's make it somewhat. Okay, let's have a look. Let's make the columns bigger. Right, so here are the time slots. So this is the kind of graph, sorry, not the graph. So these are the time slots here, so which is then broken down here. So we've got the date and the timings, and then these are the prices. So these are the different prices of electricity between for that particular time period, starting from 11:30, starting from 11 o'clock all the way up to 10:30 to 11 o'clock slots. And this particular client has chosen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 slots in total, and up to 7 AM they've chosen 5, and then from the day slots they've chosen another 5. So what they've done is, it then, because they've chosen 5 and 5, it's automatically found the 5 lowest costs of charging, 5 lowest slots of prices, and they've put it into here, and that's why they've got the little tick boxes here. So it will automatically start charging the batteries at these times for PM nighttime slots and then the daytime slots. Okay, now if let me see if let me see if I can find another client who has done a slots based on price. Sorry, no, all of them are choosing number of points rather than total price. So price, let's have a look, sorry. So these are number of points. So they're the lowest price points within, these are the lowest cost unit price over a 30-minute period, and that's what they're charging the batteries at for that particular time frame. Now, if we choose, so here, this is where they would set it up. So that client that I've showed you had it set up like this: 5 points between 0 and 8 AM, and 5 points between 12 midday and 7 PM. Now, if you decide to choose price instead, this is where the charging price and discharge price comes in. So I have stated on here that if the charging price is less than 1 pence per kilowatt hour, so if the unit price goes less than a penny, then start charging my batteries. It doesn't matter what time of day it will automatically start charging my batteries. Because if you think about it, if I'm only being charged 1 pence per unit to use electricity, I rather have the house using it from the grid at 1 pence than taking it from the batteries. So the batteries would automatically charge and the house would use grid until the price goes back above 1p, then it would automatically start discharging from the batteries, and the house would automatically use battery power rather than grid power. It'll never get there, but I've put this in as a demonstration because I don't want my system to switch over. Discharge price. So again, now with Agile, you also can have flexible discharging. So you can then say, hang on a minute, if Octopus requires some energy and they're willing to pay me 50p per unit, then by all means take it from me. And then the system would automatically start discharging, and naturally it'll be exporting, and I will then receive 50 pence a unit instead. So that's where you can make some extra cash for it. Okay, so that's how according to price works. So according to set points, time frames, how much the energy will cost on a 30-minute time slot, and it'll choose the five cheapest, or say 11th cheapest, or just 3. You just choose the number of points. According to price, you set a minimum what you're willing to pay to charge your batteries at, and it will work throughout the day, anytime during the day. And the discharge price, if you do not want to discharge and you want to make sure you never ever discharge, you can set this at a much higher rate, so say 100 pence, a pound, which you know you'll never ever get, so it'll never ever discharge. All right, so that's how that works on the Octopus Agile. So that's how the Agile system works. So again, if you're not with them at the moment and you want to go on with them, again, click on the link in the description, and if you're UK, you can switch to Octopus Agile, and we both get £50 credit on our accounts to get it. I know it's been a bit of a long video, but hopefully it's been comprehensive, and you should have all the data you need, all the information you need to make to basically try and understand how the Lux Hybrid app works and how the system works. So all being well, going forward, you'll have a much better understanding of this, of the new features, and of course of Octopus. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the sections. If you've liked this video, definitely put a thumbs up and a like for me, and spread the word, share the video, and hopefully we'll see you soon on the next one. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.